Okay, good morning. It's probably about 9 o'clock. Morning chores are done. And so what I'm working on today is this big compost pile that we've built up over the winter, all the way back from the leaves that the villages of Bradner and Wayne brought out to me, mixed in with the manure. It's sort of, we've let it sit here and break down over the winter, and I haven't turned it really at all. So what we're doing is while the ground is still froze, I'm going to come out and we're going to flip it. Looks like winter's probably just about over for us, so we're going to stir up this compost pile and speed up the breakdown here and try to keep it somewhere north of 140, 145 degrees. You can see it's still awfully hot in there, and so we'll get that stirred up and able to spread out onto the pastures here in about another week or two. All right. Okay, so we've got probably half of it spread out. I'm just gonna kind of keep going along. I don't know how well this shows up, but you can see the difference. This part of the pile is probably a little bit older, and you can kind of see how this breaks right down, and then this is what we end up getting, and that's what goes out on the field. You see how that pretty much at this point just as it becomes soil. So we don't concern ourselves too much with making sure it's all perfect. You know, we're not screening it, it's not going into a vegetable bed or anything like that. For what we're doing, applicating it out onto the pasture, sort of a rough grade compost, works just fine. All right, so we've got it pretty much spread out. What you can see is these areas where you can definitely tell there's still leaves. This is the reason you stir the pile. When these leaves come in, they're usually packed pretty tight in the back of a truck, and so what happens is it creates cold spots in the compost pile. And then, if by contrast, if you look over here, this where it just looks just like black soil, that is that's what we're aiming for. So this area here is actually probably a little bit of leftover. Every year when we take compost out, I try to leave a little bit behind. That way we have kind of a primer when we get the next pile started. So that just seems to help speed things up. So, all right, we'll get this stacked back up. All right, so we got the pile restacked. This should start cooking here in the next 24 hours. We should get the temperature back up. We're sort of limited on restacking as far as how high you want to go with it. So we're a little more spread out than we were to start with. Part of that is because when you turn it, you're introducing a lot of air back into it, sort of fluffing that pile up. The other part is you don't really want to drive the tractor back up onto the pile, you know, in order to stack that pile higher and higher, because what ends up happening is you're just packing it down tight, and you're going to create those cold spots inside of your pile again. So we've got a thermometer in here that kind of helps us keep track of this. I just stuck this back in, and so we're already up back over 100 degrees. We'll check this periodically over the next 2 weeks or so, and make sure we're getting up there. But by tomorrow morning, my guess is we'll be back up at least over 140, and generally we see temperatures up around 160. It kind of all just depends on that microbial dance party in there and how much heat we're going to generate. But as long as we get up 145, 150, if we can hang in there for a while, we'll at least kill off all the bad pathogens and anything else that might have come in. So,
hey guys, Michelle here from Weber Ranch. I am out in our front field this afternoon, and I will be taking a ride with Tony on our tractor. The beginning of this video, you saw a little bit of his prep work for our compost piles, and so he's now spreading everything out on the fields, and so you're gonna take a ride with me and see how everything's spread across the field. Obviously it's broken down really nicely into some rich soil, And in a few, after we take a ride, we'll talk to Tony about the benefits of spreading this broken down compost on our fields right now in early spring. See you in a bit. All right, so you just kind of finished spreading a good majority of the compost on the pasture. I know you've got a couple more passes, but what is the purpose of spreading it on this early in the season? What's the purpose for it?
Well, a couple reasons. One is that pile's really big and I need room for new manure. So I kind of have to spread some of it now. It might be a little earlier than I would probably like, but generally once the soil starts to warm up a little bit, we're done with snow. We're just about done with freezing nights, I think. And so I came out and checked, and underneath what kind of looks brown, there's new clover and grass starting to grow. So there is some life starting in the field, and so that's what we're doing, is feeding some microbes. So all we are doing is transferring the microbial dance party from the compost pile out to the field, and then we're probably a rate of, I don't know, maybe 3 tons to an acre is about how much I try to put out. That just kind of varies on how much I have and sort of if the manure spreader is working correctly or not.
What are the health benefits to, I mean, obviously we've broken down our manure and everything. That compost pile has been broken down to like nice rich soil. So what is the benefit of spreading this on a field that already has grass, obviously, that's already has pasture grass? So what's the benefit?
This is basically our fertilizer program.
Okay.
Between this and then the actually moving the animals and the fertilizer falling out of the back ends of those cattle and the chickens as they go across the pasture, this is the other part of it. So yeah, we don't spread any actual commercial fertilizer. This is
we make our own.
it. Yeah, this is
the natural stuff.
Yeah, and so at 3 tons an acre, I don't know, maybe it depends who you ask, but what we're doing is adding organic material back into the soil. So we're kind of feeding the earthworms, and that's what we're trying to do, is get more organic matter into the soil, and that'll help with feeding the earthworms, water retention, water infiltration. It kind of keeps that duff layer on top of the soil. Yeah.
Perfect.